If your team's trying to move faster with AI or scale more efficiently without reinventing the wheel, InfoQ DevSummit Munich 2025, this October 15th and 16th, might help. It's a practical event, talks from people in the trenches, sharing what they've actually shipped, fixed, or learned. No big launches or buzzwords, just useful ideas you can take back to your team the next day. Learn more at devsummit.infoq.com.
Hello everybody, I'm Olympio Pop, an InfoQ editor, and I have in front of me Asgaut and Ola, two of the speakers of QCon London this year. The topic that they touched upon is pair programming needs to be married with continuous deployment, or the other way around. And obviously then we have more questions for them, and this is the opportunity to have it. Gentlemen, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Asgaut. I've been working as a developer now for 19 years. And a little bit different roles, but mainly programming. Been interested in clean code and working together all the way from the start. The last 5, 6, 7 years, we've been moving more to working with culture across teams.
Yeah, and my name is Ola. I've been working as a developer for about 15 years now. I've had several different roles, developer, tech lead, architect, but also always been interested in the culture side. Because if you want to have a good architecture, you have to have a good culture.
But we both love programming. That's the most important part.
Well, I know that one of the questions I asked you initially was, how do you convince your manager? Because usually when you're talking about changes, that's what the question that everybody has. And you were both smiling, and at some point you started laughing. And okay, the management is behind us. They are just supporting us. And actually, I was talking to one of our common friends, Rustam, and he said, that's why I joined their company. So I have to ask you, what's your company like? How is it working?
Our company is both owned and have 13 banks as customers. So they both own us and they're a customer. So we can organize ourselves as a tech company. And this started all the way back in 2012, when our leadership decided that the base philosophy of our company should be lean philosophy, basically respect for people and a focus on continuous improvement. So they have been on board all the time, actually. One of the reasons why we are here today was back in 2016, leadership decided that basically they wanted more. So they set pretty much a stretch goal that we called 24/30, which was 24 hours from idea to production and 30 minutes from finished code to production, which back in 2016 was quite ambitious. Back then, we were a dual organization with a development side and then a huge apparatus for taking the stuff from development and then moving it into production. Some of our listeners are probably aware of something called ITIL, which was how our organization was organized. So we had people responsible for receiving stuff that we did in development, and then we had to document a lot of things. And I think back then we had like 2 releases per year. So going from that to 30 minutes from finished code to production was quite a leap.
I guess one of the most important parts here is that we're not a bank, but we serve 13 different banks. So we're a tech company, and the leadership, they are really with us. And they are tech people all the way up to the management, and that's really affects how we work.
Okay, so let me try to frame this in one word. You have 13 banks as stakeholders, but also as owners of the company. And from that point on, you're acting as their technology arm. So that allows you to work like a technology company.
Yeah, we create all the software, and the software we create for the 13 banks are the same software, just similar changes in products, but it's the same software for all the different banks. It's called Sparbank 1. It's like a alliance.
Okay. And then you moved from a more traditional banking ecosystem where you're just based on ETL. That meant more like a factory line working where you just did some stuff, then you provided it to the next piece in the chain and so on and so forth. To
basically throw it over the wall.
You just throw it over the wall and then you close your ears and you don't care about what happens. Moving towards a lean aspect, that's more in the manufacturing, but you found a very ambitious goal.
And basically what we did was that we just started increasing our delivery cadence. So we started, instead of delivering every 3 months, we started delivering every month. And then we started every week. And then we started every day. And as we increased the cadence, we could see where things started to hurt. And obviously testing and documentation. I don't think when you have quarterly releases, I don't think that anyone reads the entire documentation anyways. But when you have to produce and read the same documentation every week instead, then then you realize that this is not sustainable. You have to do something different. And then we used that as leverage to improve our process.
So what you said is that you started in 2016, right? So 9 years down the road, you still have 5 to go. How far along are you on touching that target? Because that's only a dream to come true, like 24 hours since you ideate up to the point. I know that you're in Norway and now the day is very long and you have a lot of light. But that doesn't mean that it will allow you to work more. And also to have, like you said, half an hour since the code is finished to have it to production. So that's just a goal, that's a dream. How far along are you? Did you touch this?
That was achieved in 2016.
Yeah. Basically, when we reached 2017, 2018, we started moving from a virtual machine-based production environment to a Kubernetes-based environment. So we were there in 2018, 2019, and we had automatic deploy at least from 2016 as well.
Yeah, but this is the important fun part, because all the technology was in place, but now it's the people and the culture. Because even though you can move code into production every day, people still used big branches. They maybe worked in a branch for 2 weeks. So that was like the way we worked on that time. So we had the technology, but now we have to start convincing people to work in other ways to make smaller things to go more rapidly into production.
And that's where the lean part comes in as well.
So one of the strongest principles in lean is continuously improving, taking the garbage out, looking at your system or your process, and then
we love that.
ongoing.
So,
it's quite nice and it's very easy to relate for most of the people.
Yeah, we have a special thing that we invented ourselves in our team that we call the waste clock. Because everyone wastes a lot of time. You waste time and we waste time and manage waste time, and everyone wastes time on waiting. We wait on people not coming into meetings. We wait on slow software. And as developers, we wait even more because we wait on stuff that are the same every time. When I started in Sparebank 1, we had a Maven build who took around 2 minutes. And I was used to working with Quarkus, which took a couple of seconds. And this took 2 minutes. And then I asked, we can't work like this. It takes 2 minutes. And then they just told me, this is just how the world is. And then the other guys, they are sitting there with how the world is. And the other teams around the corner, they are sitting with the same framework and everything. And they are sitting waiting 2 minutes. And then this just adds up and the whole company wastes a lot of money. But the cool thing is when you move into the pair programming, working together stuff, maybe the first time you look at this build on 2 minutes, you drink some coffee and it's okay. But the next time it's like, we have to fix this. We can't wait 2 minutes. This is a positive consequence of working together, that you reduce waste much faster as a good consequence of working together.
That's an interesting concept. How does that clock work? I mean,
it's not an actual clock. We just talk about it as it's like a stopwatch. When we wait, we could have had the stopwatch, and just every time we start waiting, we just start it, and it all adds up during a day.
Yeah.
That's a concept that you have in terms of a focus point, in terms of introspecting and retrospecting of how things can be done faster.
Yeah. And we start this watch all the time. Like yesterday, we have to wait for another team to approve a pull request. We hate pull requests, but that's a problem when other teams are doing stuff. And then we sit there 4 hours. We have to wait. And then the waste clock starts again.
Okay. That's usually a challenge when you have interdependencies to others.
And it's the same thing when we look back to the way we worked before, when we had several releases a year, and then you have to wait for someone to deploy it before you get feedback. And then you don't know, everything is in limbo for a long time. And then you can start working on something else, but then when the thing that you stopped working on 3 months ago goes into production, you have to drop everything else to fix bugs that you created 3 or 6 months ago. And
this moves us into the part with feedbacks and waiting, and we are very impatient. We are actually feedback junkies, I guess. This is a focus that we have on everything. We need fast feedback on everything that we do. And that goes all the way from the start, where test-driven development is a really good way of having quick feedbacks when we work, all the way to we need a fast build on all the tests. We need a fast build on the CI server and so forth. So this is a main focus that we have. Yes.
I like this line, feedback junkies. I think I can relate to that.
Yep.
But what the example that you provided to Asgaut was feedback in the engineering space.
Yeah.
But you know, and I know, everybody knows that the most important one is the customer feedback. It's those that are doing it. How do you incorporate that? I mean, obviously, you go all the way to production.
Yeah.
Half an hour is very fast.
No, it's faster. Now it's 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes from push to main to production. It's 5 minutes. And it has to be 5 minutes. If it's more than 5 minutes, then it's a problem, because before lunch, we can put code into production maybe 5 times. So we make small things, put in production, maybe behind feature toggles, and then we move over and over. If it was half an hour, then we'd ruin the process.
Well, guys, there are still 5 years until 2030. Probably by 2030, you'll have negative. You'll first have the things implemented, and then you'll get ideas or something like that.
I think if we were in the 30 minutes to production today, we would be caffeine junkies.
That's the beauty of technology, because making very complex things seem simple, or at least talking them so naturally. But obviously, there are a lot of things that are involved into all these points. As you mentioned, culture is the most important one, because that's the place where you have the most friction. Then you mentioned feature flags. So that pushes the things in the platform space. And then you're talking about a lot of tooling probably that will assure you the proper quality of the code you wrote. It's about testing and feature flags that are just probably built out directly in the platform space. You then have the operational aspect. So this is an iceberg, a whole iceberg around everything. So how did the company approach it? How did you approach it? Was it like, this is the destination, you had a target operating model, and then you just did it? Or you just went incrementally, stepwise? You just look at one point, then take a step, look at what you happened, and then just improve it?
Yeah. Back in 2016, when we started with the 2430, it was our first foray into, I would say, the DevOps space. I wouldn't say it was the correct way of going into DevOps, but what we did was that we created a new team called Optimus that was responsible for getting the speed up. There were people from development there and people from operations that worked together to speed up deployment and to make sure that everything happened safely and in the correct order. And there's another very important thing there, which also touches on culture, because if you want to change how often you can deploy to production and all of that stuff, you need to have IT operations on board as well, because especially in IT-led environments, change is dangerous. And if you keep pushing the people who are responsible for keeping your systems alive with more changes without any explanation or getting them on board with your thought process and actually including them, then they're going to push back. And then you're going to have friction and basically conflict. So we started with that team, and then we started automating the deployment phase. And then from there, we have gradually improved. We have switched the architecture a few times, gone from, as I said earlier, from virtual machine-based pet servers to Kubernetes on-prem. And now we have everything in the cloud on Kubernetes. And
we have an awesome team now working on platform with AWS, and they are all the time trying to improve how fast things are going out to production, make sure everything is secure and so forth. Because even though, as we said earlier, we are a technology company, at the end of the line, our systems touch on people's money. So our systems and our processes has to be secure. Yeah, we can't skimp on security or do things half-baked. We have to do it properly. Yeah, But at the same time, it's cool to see if you see like the whole circle when we put things into production. Then we first sit together, we work together on everything. No task is like not suitable for working together. We work together on absolute all tasks. Then we do test-driven development on everything. And as long as we have something that can go into production, it's going to the CI server. The CI server just builds main builds. And that's a positive consequence that we saw in working together. We are the only ones working on our code bases in our team. And we work together on everything. So why should you build branches on the CI server? It's just waste of time and waste of money and energy. So we quit building branches on the CI server, just build main. And then if that's green, then it goes automatically into production. And then we have sometimes feature flags, so sometimes it just goes directly out. But it's so small pieces that touches productions all the time that we're very, very safe when it goes out. And then we have alarms if something goes wrong. So we get alarms in Slack. And on top of that, we have an own team that is monitoring all applications in the bank all the time. So we're very, very safe. And we've been working on this way for now 3 years. This part that we are working on is like the heart of the bank. It's concerning accounts. In Norway, it's 1.2 million users and 35 million requests per day. So if we do something wrong, then we are in a newspaper. And still, though, we're just putting things into production all the time with the resting heart rate. And the whole circle here is fast feedback. It's scientifically a way of working and works brilliant. Everyone should do it.
That's the end goal, right? That's the dot on the horizon for most of us, or at least that's what I hope. Let me rewind a bit. Ulla mentioned before that one of the drivers of the change inside the company was Optimus. When you said your spare bank line, so probably it was Optimus Prime to just keep the number one in the name. So that's more or less an enablement team, right? Their focus is driving change, making things proper, probably finding things that are used across the company. So their main goal was make things fast and probably secure. Then the journey that you mentioned was virtual machines, like a lot of the banks are still having these days, moving towards Kubernetes on premises, and then currently in the cloud space. And then you mentioned that you have the threshold currently, it's at 5 minutes. Then Asgaut mentioned that you're doing a lot of test-driven development and a lot of pair programming. But what I wanted to ask you is, how do you do the rest of the testing? You have 13 clients, right? I would expect that is a product, but each of the 13 banks probably has a different level of customization.
No, actually, they have very few differences between them. They have the same branding. They have more or less the same products. They have a few different things here and there, but that's usually implemented as own microservices.
Yeah,
you're lucky. You're lucky, guys.
Yeah, I did work in a different company here in Norway where we had Spring Beans-based configuration. Basically, each implementation of the application was different based on which bank it was. And we had XML that shows the correct Spring Bean based on bank. And it was painful.
Yeah, I know. I was working in banking or in finance world at that point, investment banking. But during the MiFID II implementation, and that was painful because you had like a full stop at the beginning of January and you had to implement a lot of stuff. People started only customizing stuff with a couple of months in advance, and we had multiple environments and everything was so complex. And then you had like a GA candidate, a couple of pilots, and everything was like all over the place. That chaotic approach worked, but still, obviously, your simplicity is only something to be envious for.
Yeah, we sometimes do get deadlines as well based on compliance or new regulation and so on. And basically, when you have to work towards a deadline and maybe you can't put something into production properly before that deadline, it gets painful when you can't work the way we want to. But sometimes we have to.
But because one of the best benefits with the way we work is the developer joy. It's the learning. It's the fast learning, developer joy. And one of our main goals is to make more people work in this way, to have the same life and days at work that we have. So we do a lot of work across the company as well to make more people work in this way.
It's interesting that you touch on that. What will be the metric that you're using? Because your stretch goal is very broad and it has to have different key results, different objectives, underlying points. And developer joy is something that is quite important.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's hard to measure. Then it's also the empirical stuff that you can just say, how much time did I need, as you mentioned before? The Maven build, that was 2 minutes, and now it's something that goes in seconds. How do you orchestrate all this? Because you have two different things. There are the measurable part that obviously you can just track and see how it goes and see trends. And then are things that are outside the boundaries of your companies, like developer joy and how things are done. How do you orchestrate all this stuff?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. We really like to measure stuff in our company. So we have surveys all the time saying how people feel and how they feel in their teams and how they like to work here. So that measures how people are enjoying their work. We have scientists, researchers that we have on board here for 5-6 years, I think, which have been researching on efficient teams. And they have been researching across a lot of different organizations in the Nordic region. They have Ericsson, they have Spotify, they have a lot of the big companies that they can compare as well. But they've been following us. And we have done something really interesting together with them, because me and Ola, we go around the company and we talk about how we can work together and make small things work the way we work. But it all comes down to you have to test it out yourself. So the idea we came up with together with Syntef was that we had a given period for 3 or 4 weeks. And then we have one team or several teams in a tribe or area, which are going to test to work together. And we set some prerequisites. Yeah. One was that everyone has to book at least 2 pair programming sessions a week in the calendar. So, because that's the way that everyone has to do it. And then the other thing is that you have to rotate at least every 10 minutes who is a navigator and who is a driver in the pair programming session. And then everyone just tests this for 3 weeks. The researchers, they do surveys before, they do surveys afterwards, they do observations during the experiment or intervention, as we call it. And then they do surveys a couple of months later as well. So then they measure how many pair programming sessions did you have before the experiment, how many did you have after, how many did you have 3 months later. And then we get some data on this as well and other findings.
And we also, during the experiments, we have weekly retrospects for the teams that are involved. And what usually happens is that things that are problematic in the team surfaces during this. That sounded very dramatic, but stuff like we are too many in the team, we have too much responsibility, we have too many meetings. All of these things has a tendency to bubble up during these experiments, because forcing people to work together exposes all of the things that makes it difficult to work together.
Yeah, and this has been a success. We had 5 different experiments now over the 2 last years, involving a lot of people around the company. And since the researchers, they see a huge benefit here. This is a really good way of introducing a new technique in a company without forcing it, because everyone is just have to test it for 3 or 4 weeks, and then they can do whatever they want afterwards. So they are actually writing a scientific article about this as well and had different presentations of it. They gave us some key findings that we could say from this, and that is, for example, more cross-functional collaboration, reduced waiting times, stronger culture of collaboration, higher quality feedback, improved well-being, increased psychological safety. It's amazing. Then we have something to measure.
Is the article available or it's still in the making?
I think it's still in progress.
Make sure you send it over when you have it. Great. So it seems that you have some help. You have people that are focused on observing, people that are referees or coaches from the outside. On one side, you have the enablement team that is focused and drives that change. And on the other side, you have a research company that is focused on observing, coming and trying to put the priority into place.
Yeah, we are the enablers, me and Ola. We are the ones who do all this stuff. And then we just have the researchers that are researching. Your company can try it. Everyone can try it. It's really not harmful. It doesn't affect the things that you plan to do in that period. So we actually made other companies try it out as well.
Well, continuous deployment is one part of the pill that is very hard to imagine by most of the guys, even though it's something that is a standard in the technology space. But then pair programming is something that every manager will just probably scream when you're just saying that you have a workforce that is probably very crowded in terms of what they need to implement, and then you just slash that in half. How did the people react to this kind of change? First of all, the management, and then second of all, the developers, because developers are an interesting breed. They have their own way of working, headsets on the heads, doing the coding.
It's kind of interesting that you say that, because in our experience, if you give management a good presentation on the benefits, they're not that difficult to convince. Maybe we're lucky, but they weren't the problem. No. Developers are actually harder to convince.
Yeah, that is why we do these experiments, for example. But just to answer your question directly, if two people working together is faster than two people working in parallel, there are a lot of stuff coming in here, but one thing is focus. When me and Ola is working together 2 hours for one task, we do nothing else. We don't check Slack, we don't check emails or anything else. We just work. And we both come into the flow state, which is amazing. Everyone loves to be in the flow state. So you get to do a lot of stuff in those 2 hours. And then you produce measurably higher quality when you work together. You talk about design all the time. And this together with the test-driven development gives a really high output of the quality. The second thing here is the rework, because when we have done this, we don't use any time on pull requests. We never use a second on pull request. We just create it and then we approve it as part of compliance, but we never use any time with pull requests. So that time is eliminated because we work together. And then when the code goes further into production, it has so high quality that it's very, very seldom that there is any problem with it. And we know that problem that comes after something is finished, when it goes, if it's just a bug in test environment or production environment, they are really, they cost a lot of money. A bug when we are two people is just an hourly rate of us two. But a bug in production can involve the whole company. And
in a worst case scenario, it can put all 13 banks in crisis mode, which is really, really, really expensive.
And I think the measurement of this is extremely difficult to measure the rework after work when you haven't worked together. But we can see it over time that it's measurably much, much lower. We have very few bugs and we have high quality.
Okay, so one of the measurements of your success can be defects, and then see exactly where did you manage to find the bug, whether it was during the coding session, during the TDD session, or moving all the way to production, because that's the most expensive, obviously.
Yeah, and everything here, it fits together, because if we find a bug in production, our code has such high quality with test-driven development and the things we do with domain-driven design and everything, it's very easy to just go in, create a test that fails, fix the bug in the implementation, and as long as that test goes green, we go directly into production. We trust our unit tests so high that we don't have to do any end-to-end tests, for example.
What's the target? What's the coverage target that you have?
Coverage targets.
Never
thought about that.
I think coverage targets are a bit like lines of code targets. They don't have a meaning in itself. But since we do TDD, I guess most of everything inside our domain has more or less 100% coverage.
Yeah, I would be surprised if it didn't.
And the same with external dependencies, integrations. They also have high coverage. Let's say if we integrate with a database, then we create an adapter and then we write integration tests on that, where we use test containers, a Docker-based database to run our tests against. So I guess our coverage target is really high, but we don't say 100% or 90%.
So you don't have something that checks, you already have it boiled down in your culture and you know exactly where it stands.
Yeah, it's if I create some code that doesn't have good enough test coverage, then both that and the other guys in the team will look sternly at me.
And just,
That's a benefit of being co-located and being in the office. But when you're looking into continuous integration, I would expect you have to have some kind of fitness function, some kind of threshold, some kind of tools that are ensuring the quality, because no, nothing. So you're just the two of you coding. You're happy.
Yeah, well, we do have stuff that checks for vulnerabilities and stuff like that. So,
but that's a whole different thing.
Then tests.
Yeah, that's for sure. You have unit tests. So what happens when you have the continuous integration running? You run the tests. You have the unit tests that you wrote and the whole package of everything.
Yeah.
Then you have probably vulnerability testing. Well, down the line, at some point you check for dependencies and so on and so forth. What else? And nothing is looking at the sanity of your code, looking at architectural perspectives.
I think that's an important part. That is, since we're putting so much stuff into production all the time, the difference between what we have locally and what we have in production are very, very small all the time. It's very similar. And it's the whole circle here from local machine to CI to production and feedback back to us. That goes all the time. And that is kind of the end-to-end tests.
We have lots of metrics in production that tells us if something is wrong. If we have a slow database query, or if we have done something that makes our JVMs do lots of garbage collection, or we have memory leaks or so on. So we have lots of metrics there, but we don't have anything in our pipeline that tells us that we are not following some prescribed architecture.
And this works brilliantly for several years, and we have a super good control and high quality.
And we are several teams, and the architecture is coherent, but that's because it's also baked into our culture.
The teams are very autonomous in how we work, and one of the main goals is also to don't have any handoffs to other teams. We can work as autonomous as we want. So we do all the internal architecture and designing and everything. We see that one of the main problems for feedbacks and speed is in the minute that we are connected to another team or we have to wait for another team, then everything slows down immediately. So we want to have higher team autonomy as we want. If we have to do something together with the other team, because sometimes we do, the last time we did it, then two of the people from the other team was sitting with us in the period. And they were part of some of our meetings, and we worked together with them closely in that period. And then they went back to their team again.
Okay.
And we never accept pull requests from other teams. Never. If you are in our company, you couldn't do a pull request into our team. This is part of the team boundary. Then we said this several times to everyone in the company. No one can do pull request into our code in our team. If you want to do a change in the code base that we manage, then you have to come to us, talk to us. And if we agree, then we pair program it together. People, they just delivered big pull requests into the code base in our team, and we didn't have time to see it properly. And we just merged it in, and then we got a mess. So this is a much better way of working, we think.
So that feels that you have more or less a microculture where your teams are highly autonomous, probably even getting close to independence. Like you are very responsible for everything that you're doing.
Yep.
And in case somebody wants to do something, they have to come on board, work with somebody in the team that knows the way of doing the stuff, and that's your safety net.
Yeah.
How sensible is that to, I don't know, people being on holiday, people leaving, sickness? Because it begs the question, like, okay, you don't rely on tooling, you don't allow people from outside, so everything is very team dependent.
Yeah, since we do work a lot together, we have a high grade of resilience because everyone knows everything at all times.
For developers.
Yes, and we're 4 developers, product lead and team lead. And we both have children that get sick, and they bring germs home that makes us sick often. So we have a lot of experience with people being away. And since we work together on everything, it's usually not a problem because there's usually more than 2 people present at all times.
Yeah.
So it's just isn't much of a problem
No, we put small things in production all the time. So before a holiday, there's nothing big happening. We also have the computers with us if something happens, but never happens.
The technology stack in most of the teams are quite similar. It's Java, Spring Boot, and so on. We try to have as much industry standards as possible so that onboarding, especially with the way we work, is really easy. So that helps as well. If we need to bring in someone else, then they're not completely in unfamiliar territory.
We actually stress test that, if I can tell you about that. Because the thing we have tested now this spring is something we call job shadowing. So, for example, if you wanted to start in our team, what we did, we took a developer from another team and he visited us for a week. And then there was no preparation, just some communication between his team lead and our team lead. It's okay if he comes for a week, and then you get a cinnamon bun when he comes to the first day, and then we just start working together. And he's putting directly into a pair or a mob, and then we switch every 7 minutes who is typing, who's watching. And before lunch, the first day, he had code in production. And then he was just immediately rolled into the team. And what he said was that in his 5-year-long career, he never had so much flow and focus that he had that week. We had another woman who did the same a couple of weeks later, who had the exact same experience. And then it was much better than to sell them to external course or something. They can just come to us and work with us for a week. And then we really saw that this onboarding is extremely efficient when we work the way that we work. And this also changed. If everyone works similar to us, then the team mobility inside the company would be completely different because you can move around teams all the time. Earlier, it maybe took 2 months to learn how the team works and blah, blah, blah. Now it just onboarded immediately. And that goes even if you're a senior or junior or whatever.
Okay. We do test-driven development. We always do pair programming.
Yeah.
But what are the exceptions? When are you solo programming?
2 days ago, because we're 4 people and suddenly you're alone because someone is in a meeting and one is sick. And me and Ola had been sitting working together, and then suddenly I was alone. And what happened after maybe 30 minutes is that you feel that you have to do decisions by yourself, which is really weird and awkward when you used to pair program. And then you know that if you take a decision and then you continue, then you get this follow problems that I have to change when he comes back. So the exceptions are these: when he's in a meeting, the other ones are sick, then you maybe have 1 hour, maximum 2 hours that you have to work alone, and that's fine. Then we just have some reviewing, and then when he comes back.
So usually if one of us is away for the whole day, then we just do a mob of 3 or 2 if people are present.
So that's the thing now, 4 people. If we're 4, we split in 2. If we're 3, we always work in a mob or 2. We work
that was the next question. Looking at the other outlier, because obviously that's one extreme where you're just working solo. But given the size of the team, I expect that when you have different challenges, then you can just group the whole team.
Yeah, and we work remotely as well. We do the same. It doesn't matter if one is in the office and 3 are home. We work in the same way all the time.
Did the size of the team change with the adoption? At some point, were the teams bigger at any given moment of time?
We still have a lot of teams that are too big, unfortunately.
In the company.
We have a model that's similar to the Spotify model, if you're familiar with that, where you have what we call areas, and then inside the area you have teams, and then the area can share resources such as team leaders and product leaders and stuff like that. That doesn't make sense to have one per team. So that gives you better flexibility on team size. Instead of having one team of 12 people with one team lead, you maybe have 3 or 4 teams with 4 people and 2 team leads, which have 2 teams each, which gives us the possibility to split into smaller teams. Because what we see is that once teams increase in size, their responsibility area usually increases as well. which makes it very difficult to prioritize. And then you get too much work in progress on the team, and then you're no longer a team, you're just a group of people working together.
The team size of maybe 4, maximum 5 developers, we think it's fine. That's what Sintef found as well.
What the research says.
It can depend a bit what you're creating, if you need more cross-functional people.
Okay. We spoke a lot about things that are normally scaffolding, the part of the culture and everything else. But in the end, you as a software development technology company, your goal is to deliver functionality, impact for the organization. And usually Agile stands, or for a lot of people, it's synonymous with Kanban, Scrum, and whatever. How do you do that? I mean, how do you approach it? So do you have your own way of looking at things? You're taking more from the Spotify model where you have very much autonomy and you're just focusing on a particular topic, and then you have people from marketing, you have people from different other parts of the organization to ensure you that you're just have everything to make sure that you can launch it?
We use something called OKRs, Objective Key Results, where on different levels in the company, there are different goals. The goals always point upwards to the goal above it. So our team, let's say that management says, we want to focus on modernizing our platform. And then that cascades down. And for us, it means get rid of the last VM-based servers we have. So that's how we manage to have coherent goals through the organization.
And our team lead and product owner, she is the one responsible to see that we are following these OKRs in our team. So we talk to her several times a week. Inside our team, we work on a model called the radical focus. Have you heard of that? It's you have a Monday commitment where you just say the task you're going to do this week, and then you have a Friday win where you see what you have done that week. Is like kind of a celebration. And then you work through the week. And what we see now when we're working with small tasks and putting things into production all the time is that task issue tracking system, they became redundant. Yeah, we used more time on moving tasks inside Jira from in progress to done and stuff than we did on actually creating stuff. So we quit entirely with Jira some years ago. So on Monday, we just have some checklists, what we're going to do during the week, which are the main tasks. And one very important part there is that we never assign people to the tasks. It's the team that's going to deliver the tasks and not specific people. And then we just start working and work through the week. And then we see after a week, we have a small retro and we have this Friday win. And then we see what we've done and what we're going to do the next week. And that's the whole stuff. It's back to the waste clock. We're reducing waste there as well.
Because the problem is that many organizations, when they implement an agile practice, they go to one of the big frameworks and then let's start by implementing everything. And then it kind of just gets stuck there. But instead, we start with as little as possible. And then we see we need a way to track minor things that we see in the code when we're working. Okay, we have a whiteboard. So we just put the small tasks on the whiteboard instead. And then as the week progresses and we finish one task, we just take the next task from the whiteboard instead of creating several issues in a tracking system.
Yeah, the beauty of this as a consequence as well is that the status meetings are also reduced because everyone in the team, we work together and we're sitting together, we know what we're doing. So we don't need knowledge sharing sessions. We don't need stand-ups. We have 2 meetings a week, half an hour each with the product owner, but not more than that. So we have very few meetings. And of course, developers love when you have a calendar with very few meetings. That's also developer joy. And we get to do more. So everything here just fits together. It just comes to consequences of major part, which is to work together and make small things all the time.
And this goes back to the leadership philosophy as well as respect for people and having trust in people. We're all adults here and we're trusted that we do the right thing, we do our job properly.
One way we managed to come to the level we are now in our company and be as modern and work together across teams is that we have one day every week, which is Thursday, where we just focus on professional development. You can use that to whatever you want as long as it's improve your professional knowledge. And that also means that everyone in the company are available that day. So if you want to work with someone in another team to try a proof of concept or test technology or test something, then they're always available. And then that really builds culture in a good way. It's like the 20% model that Google has. It's just fixed to 1 day a week, which is very important. Then you can step out of your team, do something else, improve stuff, work with others, build culture across the company, and then you go back to your team and you take this with you. And that is one of the reasons that we managed to come this far, I think.
So the model was first implemented by Intel. Andrew Groove brought it, but you're right, Google perfected it because Google was probably the biggest streamline company that used it, and they use it properly.
Yeah, and a small retro there is important as well, that we use, because if you have retrospective every week, then you get to talk about things early, which is always also part of the feedback loops. And you also use less time on retros. And most important, you remember what happened.
Yeah.
So that's very important to the Friday wins, 10 minutes of retrospective.
Okay. And you mentioned product owners. What's the role in this whole ecosystem? You don't have Jira, so nothing for them to...
We have to say that as well. Someone used Jira.
Yeah,
and someone loves Jira and they can love it, but we are autonomous, so people can choose how they want to work and what they like to use. Not all the teams in Sparbank and Utvikling work as we do. Someone still have testers and like to have own testers and they don't work together as much.
But the role of the product leaders is they obviously talk to the banks, and they usually are responsible for a product or a set of product or an area of the internet bank. Their job is to communicate to us what goal they want us to achieve. They don't say how we should achieve that goal. And since we're co-located and they're around, we talk to them more than that because they're here. We work together. We don't necessarily need a formal meeting to talk. They come with the task, but they don't break it down into several Jira tasks. They say that...
Does anyone do that still?
Probably.
Okay. For me, it sounds like you're a very focused workshop where you have a lot of craftsmen. Everybody's very focused on what they're doing and they are just looking at the problem. Let's attack it. And then whenever you need it, you just go and chat rather than just hiding behind a very fluffy process where you're just hiding between tasks and so on and so forth. Would that sum up?
Areas, as we are a little bit independent in the area we work because we are working on everything that's concerning accounts. So we're kind of a platform team in a way. But there are other teams working more directly on products, and they are working maybe more across teams to make the products that are in bigger aspects.
I guess the product leaders also...
They work together on other...
Yeah, they work together to make sure that things are aligned. And I think they also do a lot of stuff that we don't see. They shield us from the outside.
Boring stuff.
Yeah, they reduce a lot of noise for us. So we can focus on
nice.
work.
What's next? You have 5 years. You already achieved a lot. What's next?
You want to start with...
We can start with the really fun part, which is EU regulations.
Moving on.
Actually,
You're part of the European economic space. So
yeah, we're. I'm not going into politics, but we're part of the EU. We just don't have voting rights. But we have to now in finance. We get something called the Digital Operations Resilience Act, which is actually replacing a lot of the compliance stuff we get from the government. So basically what we're doing now is looking at how could we work in a best possible way within that framework. And we have to become better at describing our processes, describing the pros of our processes, because being highly automated is actually a really good way of being compliant. If everything is automated, then you can build compliance into your pipeline. So we have to describe that in a good way. That's one thing. That's more short term. We also want to focus even more on building culture internally to get more people. If that means forcing them to work the way we work, then so be it. They shall be happy.
Yeah, but as we see, this is an outcome of all the experiments, people having better days at work. That's our biggest motivation, definitely. And we also think it's a little bit funny that like the most ancient technique in history, which is working together, is now coming up with something really important in IT. And we wanna work, as you were saying, internally to make this even better. Our company motto is better together. So we are back.
Yeah. That's a nice place to wrap. So you worked up to now into building something that flows nicely inside the company. You have some teams are more evolved than others, but you have a mechanism through which you cross-pollinate your information and you're helping others to achieve better flow. But now it's also the funny stuff that you need to do. And the amount of automation that you manage to put in place allows you to have snapshots in terms of regulation and compliance that usually require an audit or other stuff like that. But now having those things automated allows you to do that out of the box.
Yeah, that's the focus we will continue with. A third thing we want to mention is, of course, AI. We just have to mention AI, of course. As we're working together on everything, when we have this co-pilot inside IntelliJ, which suggests sentences and code as you type, when you're sitting together, we've seen that this actually interrupts us more than it makes value. So we turn that off. But the chat we use quite a lot with the Copilot, especially when it comes to third-party things that you don't want to fill your head with anyway, like how does the Spring life cycle works and stuff like that. Then we use Copilot, which is really good with things. So that's where we are right now, I guess.
Yeah, and we haven't looked that much at agents and stuff like that either. So I guess
that's coming.
We just need to figure out if it's just hype or not.
Yeah, we're focusing on making code that is easy to change. That is one of the main goals when you make code. It should be easy to change for others, but it also should be easy to change for us. And we see that when we come back to code maybe 2 years after, it's important that we can change it easy as well. And that's a focus that we try to talk about in the company as well. Instead of talking about bad code and good code, we talk about, is the code easy to change? Because if the code is easy to change, then you most likely have used many good design principles and test-driven development, everything, to make this code in a changeable state. So that is some focus that we have.
You're just focusing a lot on the outcome that you want, and then you just have layered measures like that. Like, okay, other developers or me tomorrow, it's one of the stakeholders, so I want to make sure that that's working.
Yeah, and that is, we are affected by Dave Fairley there, I guess, with all his talk around this code that is easy to change. So we try to have it like with high cohesion and low coupling and abstraction and all of this stuff. But we see that if you're doing pair programming and test-driven development, the design comes as a consequence of working this way as well.
So far, I don't see that AI generating lots of code for us gives us code that's easy to change.
No.
So come back to that topic.
But we're paying attention to it, and we're following it and reading about it and testing it.
Well, you're in a good place. Norway put a lot of money into researching about AI, so you're on the edge. If you're happy with the outcome that you have without AI, I'm sure that it's just one step away to get it on board. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. It's very insightful. Good luck in your journey, and definitely we'll talk more to see where this takes you.
Thank you.